Hello everyone and welcome to PAXP episode 15. We decided to mix things up a little bit this week. Instead of having one hour long episode, you will be getting two 30-minute episodes. So the same content, but this way you can listen to it on your ride into work, right? Because let's be honest, if you're driving to work and it takes more than an hour, you got to get a different job. I know I'm in that boat.
Oh, how long does it take you to get to work?
About an hour. About an hour. An hour there, an hour back.
Yeah. It's about anywhere from 30 to 45 minutes for me.
Hey, that's why I get paid the small bucks, right? So, so before we even start, we had a little bit of a hiccup trying to get me into Skype because we use Skype to communicate with each other as far as this past podcast goes, right? And I couldn't for the life of me get into Skype. I just couldn't figure it out. And then I remembered that it must have been from a hack that happened. So anyone, be wary of little air pumping machines for car tires that take your credit card info because they will rip you off. Apparently, I was talking to after this happened. They took my credit card information, blah blah. But after this happened, I was talking to Bank of America, and what they said was these little small things like this, like individual places, they're a lot less secure than a traditional like store or wherever you happen to go into.
So what you're talking about is like those air pumps that you used to put like a quarter in to fill air up in the tire.
Yes.
They now have like credit card readers on them in case you don't have change, and you happen to use one like a dumbass. And then
just like
that. And then somebody like went up to it after you had used it and like somehow magnetically took your credit card info or hacked the machine itself.
What I think it is, I think it was an employee on the other end who got the credit card information and just, shared it with, the black internet market.
Well, we all know who owns, convenience stores like that, right?
Trump?
I guess, I don't know.
Anyway, we got some news, some video game news, some amazing video game news. So, you know how Xbox games, and this actually, Victor, this is so amazing because it goes back to what we talked about months ago. And we talked about back-compat games. Do you remember that? And how neither one of us really played them too much, right? I played a little bit of a couple, but I wouldn't say like it's something I really look forward to. But some of the things we talked about, like we would play back-compats games if they were more compelling in terms of new gameplay or new graphics or new something. So you know what Xbox is doing? They're taking 360 games, they're adding them, but now they're making them so they're better equipped to take on Scorpio's power.
Oh yeah, they're enhanced for the Scorpio X.
Yeah,
I read it.
Dude, that's freaking amazing. So like, for instance, Witcher 2, Crackdown, Fable, and more are getting a resolution bump, right, to 4K.
Yeah.
But that's not it. Like at first I thought, okay, resolution bump, like that's pretty standard, right? That's gonna look better, but whatever, right? But they're also getting anti-aliasing, right? They're getting a higher pixel count, and increased texture detail. Like it's a whole rework.
Yeah.
It's what like we've been used to paying money for like a remastered game. Microsoft is giving it for free.
It's like they're not enhancing the textures themselves. They're doing it on the output side, on the system side, right? So it's the same texture, it's just at a higher resolution.
Well, no, they said texture detail. That's what I don't know. Because it didn't sound like, because they mentioned resolution separately, right? They said separate. They said resolution. Here's exactly what they said: resolution, anti-aliasing, higher pixel count, increased texture detail, and more. Now, the higher pixel count, I would guess, is what you're talking about, where they increase the resolution of the texture. But increasing the texture detail to me means that they're actually adding in like actual detail into the texture, kind of like what Gears of War does with the Scorpio versus the standard Xbox One.
Well, I guess we'll never find out because none of us are ever going to care to play.
Dude, I might play something. I don't know.
Yeah, okay, whatever.
I might throw in like Forza 3 just to see how it looks. I don't know.
Yeah, for like one race.
Actually, Witcher 2. I might play Witcher 2 again because that was an amazing game.
Yeah.
And so the other piece of news I have is, well, there's two really. One is that the video games rating boards, and we've all seen this, right? The ESRB rating, right? That we see like mature or teen, everyone, whatever, right?
Yeah.
They're going to be adding in a special warning for games that have microtransactions. Now, there's been some push on them over the years, but it really the push really started to hit home when with Battlefront 2. And there's this whole outcry about it. We all know, we've all experienced it as gamers, right?
Which one?
But now, Battlefront 2.
Oh, yeah.
But now, going forward, games that have microtransactions built into them will have a warning that says, with in-game offers to purchase digital content, goods, or premiums with real currency. Basically, it's telling you, like, hey, this game has microtransactions, so above your $60, you're going to not have to, but you could be persuaded to pay a little extra.
Yeah, I think it's, I mean, like this labeling, I think, is kind of dumb and kind of unnecessary, really. Because what game doesn't have some kind of DLC or purchasable content, right? I mean, very few now do not have something like that. So it's like kind of common knowledge that this game is going to have something you can buy above and beyond the game.
Well, DLC is different. Right,
well, no, because I read the same article, and they're considering anything you buy above the game. It's DLC, it's loot, it's any microtransactions from small amounts, anything that you can buy to add onto the game. They're going to put this label on it.
Hey, well, let's back up for a second. So, by DLC, what do you mean? What's in your mind as you're thinking of DLC? In this case,
like bonus levels, skins. I mean, that's really the only thing is DLC. I mean.
Okay, so
content.
Because here's what I'm thinking is, I think that developers are gonna get wise to it. So let's say, like, we take your definition DLC, right? It's gonna be like levels, right? Like new levels or maps or story content, right? I think what they're gonna do to get around this is they're gonna announce that after the game's released, right? This way, the warning's off of their game, because. Like, for me, you, and most adult gamers, this warning won't really matter, right? Because we're kind of used to it, right? We've become numb to microtransactions, in a sense. And I mean, maybe not everybody, right? A lot of people still aren't, but like I don't pay attention too much to it. But I bet you parents who are buying these things for their kids, they're like, oh wait, this game requires you to buy more stuff on top of the $60. Like, maybe I'll buy something else instead. Maybe I'll buy a Nerf gun or whatever, right? That doesn't require any DLC. And so I bet you the developers are going to start announcing, instead of having like them announce like, oh, hey, day one DLC or day one premium package or day one season 1 pass or season 2 pass or whatever, they're going to start announcing these things later so they can avoid that warning. Anyway, moving on to the last piece of news was the speech from Phil Spencer at DICE, where he talked about culture.
At DICE?
Yeah, DICE. The game conference, DICE, the video game developers conference.
Oh no, okay,
Okay, so, yes, huh? He was there.
no, as in I didn't know.
Oh, so okay, so he gave a speech about culture, right? About game culture, about company culture, and he hit on some really good points about how Microsoft had to evolve. And one thing that he mentioned was, you know how like Xbox One, when it first started, it had some very dicey, pun intended.
Wow.
Very dicey points that didn't sit well with a lot of gamers about how the Xbox One would function. And he talked about how the people working on the Xbox had completely lost faith in their leadership. Now, how crazy is that? And he talked about how he had to build that faith back up by giving them access to information that normally would be reserved for the higher ups and sharing that, and then building a culture where it went from what he said was a know-it-all culture to a learn-it-all culture, where they listen to the fans and they implement systems like that. And I think that really shows really through this like backwards compatibility, right? Where it's never been done in history, where they're really giving away remastered games for free. That's crazy. Like, normally they charge like $20, $30, $40 for these things.
What do you mean they're giving them away for free?
Well, so like if you have, like, for instance, if before back compat came out, right? If you wanted to replay like a PS3 or a 360 game on your Xbox One or your PS4, you would have to buy a remastered version, right? Which had a slightly higher resolution, which had maybe some better lighting, whatever, right?
That's the
And
only
now,
way. That's the only way.
but before backward compatibility came out, yeah, you couldn't play old games on new consoles.
Mm-hmm.
And so now, I mean, they're doing like a total fan service where if you already own the game, we'll remaster it for you at no cost. You can just pop in your game and play it. It's pretty amazing.
Yeah, I mean that's pretty cool.
And on top of that, like what they're doing with like say like Halo, right, or Gears of War, to name a couple of really good examples, where all the DLC, like the maps, like the additional maps or whatever, right, they're giving that away for free as well.
Mm-hmm.
Like, what other company does that? Like everything in Halo, you know, after you buy the $60 game, everything that's come out since then was free.
Yeah, I mean it's cool that they give you like they refresh the maps every once in a while, but it's not like compelling. It's not like you know, because when they give you a new map, they take the old one away, and in many cases,
Wait.
what I've
No,
experienced.
they don't.
What do you mean? No, they don't.
They don't take the old map away.
Well, it doesn't seem like you ever. It doesn't ever seem like they're in rotation. I mean, whenever we play Halo, we play very like. There's like a select few maps that we play. It's like I don't ever see us going through. I mean, how many maps do they have now? But if they keep on adding to the library, how many maps do they have? I mean, they would have to have like 20 or something maps by now.
To be honest, I don't know. I haven't looked up how many games they do, but they don't take them. I know they don't take them away. They add new maps. So one thing they do too.
Oh, I thought they like bring new maps forth for a limited time, and then they take them away. I think that's what they do, right?
So what they kind of have a two-tier system. They add in professional made maps that 343 makes themselves, right? And those get put into the rotation, and they're just there, and they get rotated with the old maps. But then on the other front, they also do again like another fan service where they take in popular fan-made maps, and they once in a while rotate those fan-made maps. So if you could just be some guy on a couch using Forge and Halo, making a map, your game becomes popular, and they start rotating that into it. And those maps, the fan-made ones, will rotate in and out. Those will get taken away, and new ones will appear in. But the standard maps that 343 makes don't get taken away. So maybe that's what you're thinking. Maybe you're thinking of like a fan-made map or something that was maybe taken away.
I don't know. I just don't ever feel like the maps that I've played are ever there the next time I play the game. Like it's always just something different. So I mean, like it's great they refresh it, but it's not like to me it's not compelling. It's not like, oh look at all this content they add all the time. Like I don't get that from it. I just get a sense like, oh, they're just refreshing it to kind of keep the player engaged and keep them playing.
Yeah, and I think that's because it's not a system where it's like, say, Battlefield, right, where you pay like $15 and you get all of a sudden 4 new maps, and you go into this just to 4 new maps, right? It's a system where maybe they add a map now, maybe add a map later, maybe a map later, and so forth. So it's kind of like a trickle effect versus like a one-time burst and then nothing, and then one-time burst and nothing.
Yeah, I don't know. But what were we talking about though? Is that kind of led into something else?
That's all I got. That's all I got for this.
Oh, for news. Okay.
As far as the news, I'm done.
Yeah. Okay. So I got a couple things, and I thought it was hilarious when I read this. And you may have heard it, but Sega mistakenly gave away Yakuza 6 for anybody who downloaded the demo.
That's fucking crazy.
So whoever downloaded the demo of Yakuza 6 had incidental access to the entire game. So when you download the demo, it was like the full game at like 36 or 37 gigabytes or something like that. And a lot of people were wondering, how is the demo so big? Well, because inevitably it was the entire game. And Sega made a statement like they're completely upset that this happened. They're making inquiries into how it could have happened. I'm just like how could they not have realized like almost immediately? Like who thought to post this and not realize they're posting the whole game to the to the server to download it from? So I thought that was hilarious. Like so people have the whole game for free. And then the other thing, which is not really news, it's just what's free for games this month on the PlayStation. And I thought it was worth mentioning because it's in my mind, two blockbuster games that I think everybody should download. One of them is Bloodborne. Now, Bloodborne, I have a love-hate relationship with because
It's fucking hard.
it's fucking hard. Like, I'm not a rage gamer. Like, I can't play. You know how some people rage, but they play through the rage until they achieve beating the level or whatever obstacle that they're trying to overcome. Like, if it gets to the point to where it's uncomfortable to play and I know I'm going to rage, I just stop playing that game altogether and I call it a lost cause, you know, whatever. That's how I felt with Bloodborne. But Bloodborne just looks so beautiful, and
Its
the
reviews are
environment,
amazing.
yeah, and the
Amazing.
environment looks amazing. The combat system is not bad. I wish it were a little bit better.
I've heard mixed reviews on the combat system, right? Because some
Yeah.
people really like it because they feel like there's a lot of strategy involved.
Yeah.
But other people are like, hey, it feels like it takes 10 seconds for me to swing my sword.
Yeah. Well, it depends on what kind of weapon. You can get a faster weapon, but like it has so many good things about it, and I wish like I want to revisit, and I actually might revisit it now that it's free again because I might just download it. I had a physical copy, but I sold it because I was so pissed. But I was like, I hate this damn game. But anyway, so I'm definitely gonna download that, and then the other one is Ratchet and Clank for the PS4. It was kind of a remake.
Is that good?
Oh my god, dude, it is fantastic. I bought it, and I think I played it within the last month or two. Played it through. It is so much fun.
It got a 9. It got a 9 from IGN.
Oh, dude, it is such a good game. Like, you think it might be cartoony and stuff like that, and yeah, I mean, it's a cartoon.
I do think that.
Art, well, I mean, coming from the guy that
Because it is.
played Zelda.
It is cartoony. Dude, it's the whole game's supposed to be. It's
Yeah,
supposed to be cartoony.
yeah, but I mean, coming from the guy that played Zelda and Rayman and had a
I love
Minecraft
Zelda.
binge and stuff, I mean, Ratchet and Clank is such a good game. It's very action packed, variety of art, planet styles. Like you go from planet to planet, and each one offers a different kind of environment that just looks really good, really colorful. I mean, and then just the game mechanics are so fun. Like I highly suggest you play it, Roman, because it is so much fun just to play as Ratchet and Clank. It really is that much fun. So that's why I thought it was worth mentioning those two games. Free for PlayStation Plus members. Get it while it's hot.
Okay, so one thing I'm going to mention, and this is something that hurts me to say, so I'm going to say it really quickly and quietly. PlayStation has better games for free. Okay, so...
PlayStation has better games for free? Yeah.
it consistently beats Xbox.
Oh, yeah. I didn't even want to mention Xbox's games for free because
it's crazy. Yeah, because like for instance, this month, if you look at the PlayStation games that they're giving away versus the Xbox games in terms of value, PlayStation is at over $100. Xbox is at $70.
Wow.
A $30 difference. Last month, PlayStation is at $120. Xbox $70. January, PlayStation gives away at over $160, including Deus Ex: Mankind Divided, which was amazing. Xbox $70. It's like consistently. I don't know what their freaking problem is.
They're cheap, dude. They're cheap.
That's the thing. Well, they're not cheap because they're giving you like a free back compat, which Sony doesn't, right?
Yeah.
But at the
maybe
same time,
that's the thing. Maybe they need to stop on the whole back compat thing. Maybe continue it from here forward, but don't try to bring like 2,000 games back into the into 2020. You know, it's like it's not gonna make it. It's not gonna cut it.
You know, Victor. You know, one thing I will say, I would say I check the back compat list every couple months because I keep hoping that they bring Splinter Cell into it because I desperately want to replay Splinter Cell. That is, if they bring that back, I will definitely play it, for sure.
The very first one,
all of them. There is not a Splinter Cell game I didn't like. They were all so good.
Yeah.
But I think Microsoft is smart, right? The folks working there are smart. The corporation is not smart because it's just a corporation, and so obviously so are the guys at Sony. But I bet you that they have a ton of metrics that are monitoring how many people are playing back compat, and just because you and I are not into it, I bet you they have millions of players who are playing, and that's why they keep doing it. Because there's got to be a bunch of people who are totally into these, and that's why they keep bringing more and more games and making it better and better.
Like I'm not knocking the back compat thing. Like I in essence, I support it because look at all these games that PlayStation brings back from the dead. I mean, that I'm rebuying, like the remasters and stuff like that. So I'm totally down for that. I just feel that because Xbox lacks on content now, I feel like they should be investing in something else looking forward.
Oh, dude, I would bet you right now. Let's see. Let me see. What can I bet you? What can I bet you? This is gonna be a short-term bet or mid-term bet or whatever, right? So I bet you lunch at Oh, you know what? Ichi Teriyaki. There's this fantastic teriyaki place by my place, by my house, pretty close to my house. It is everyone who's had it has, I'm not even over exaggerating.
I think you might have mentioned it to me before.
Yeah, every person who's ever had it has said it is the best teriyaki they've ever had in their life.
Damn.
I bet you lunch at that teriyaki place on me that this E3, Microsoft is gonna have more exclusives mentioned for their system than PlayStation is. Not counting indie games. So big exclusives.
Well, but that might be possible. I mean, that's very likely. For one,
yeah.
Microsoft just has really just announced a slew of games already over like the last 5, 6, 7 months.
They did?
So I can't imagine any other games that they're gonna be announcing here unless they re-announce the game. Yeah, like the
No. New games that they haven't announced before. I bet you they'll have more new announcements than
That's
PlayStation.
what I'm saying. Microsoft hasn't really announced any exclusives in a very long time, so they're very likely to. That's a hard bet to take. Like I couldn't take.
So you don't want to take it? You think? Let me get this straight.
Because PlayStation has already announced all their exclusives. That's why. I mean, so
you don't think that PlayStation's gonna have any more new things to announce?
I never said they're not gonna have anything new. I just said they're not gonna have a bunch because they already have Spider-Man.
Not as much.
They have Days
Gone.
Pac-Man? Spider-Man.
Oh, they have Pac-Man. Oh my God. They have Mario.
I mean, they have so many game exclusives that they announced that have yet to release. They're supposed to release this year, so I can't see PlayStation like announcing a whole bunch to even compete.
Okay, if you don't want to take that bet, that's totally fine.
No, I'll take the bet because I still want to try the teriyaki place, but I don't think I'll win. That's what I'm saying.
Okay, so the bet is if you lose, you buy me teriyaki there. If you win, I buy you teriyaki there, and what we're counting is non-indie, new, previously unannounced exclusives for that system and timed exclusives.
So why not non-indie? Because there's not really why not non-indie?
There are like anyone can go indie, right? I can go start a game tomorrow.
Yeah, I mean Xbox should have the same amount of indie exclusives, shouldn't they?
That's silly because anybody could do that. We're talking about big games.
Oh goodness!
Big games, non-indie. Previously unannounced at this E3.
And just so everybody's listening, PlayStation already announced all their exclusives, so Roman's going to win this bet. Just to make him feel better, I'll go along with it.
Okay, perfect. Thank you. I can't wait for my free Ichi Teriyaki. It's going to be amazing.
And
I can't wait for you to try it because you're going to be blown away, dude. You're going to be blown away. In fact, I'm going to start a teriyaki podcast after this.
Wow. It'll be one episode long.
No, it will talk about two things. It will talk about teriyaki and Forza.
Talk about eating teriyaki while playing Forza.
Oh, okay. So moving on, we know there's like top game lists for virtually every category, right? Whether you're talking about best graphics, best gameplay, most memorable games, best games on a console, best games of all time, best games of this generation, best games on PC.
Best 2D games, best 3D games, best first-person games, best third-person games. I mean, the list can go on, right?
Exactly. And I've always wondered, especially like the best games of all time, I've always wondered, how do they measure those? How do you measure, like, say, like a game like Mario Brothers, the original Mario, versus a game that, like, say, Metal Gear Solid 5?
Yeah.
Like, there's no way that game is better, but somehow it gets put higher up on the list. But I never really know the criteria. So here's what I was thinking to make this very, very clear. I was thinking of doing this: the top 5 games that have influenced us most.
As in you and I personally.
Yeah, you and I. So for you, your top 5, and me, my top 5.
Yeah.
And influenced, I mean like really brought something new to you as a gamer? And this goes back as far as you want. You could go back all the way to Atari if you wanted to.
Yeah, to from the very beginning to now, pretty much.
Yeah, exactly.
Any scope of time.
To start off, what would you, and talk a little bit about each game, but what is your 5th most influential game of all time?
Okay. Well, we're gonna take turns, back and forth, right?
Yeah, of course.
Okay, so I'm gonna. Well, I didn't know we were ranking them. I thought we were just naming the top 5. Should we rank them?
Okay, well, just pick one.
I was gonna put them in order by when I think I experienced them. I guess
that's totally fine.
So the first one I'd have to say. So I guess the 5th, number 5, whatever. The very first game I would have to mention would be Rampage from.
What?
Yeah, back in the very beginning.
God.
In the
okay,
Nintendo
you know what? I'm
console.
canceling this. We're done.
What? Dude, you talk about games that influenced you through
Okay.
like that shaped you, right? I mean, it could be anything, right?
How the hell did this game shape you?
Well,
That's
if you
crazy.
shut up
All
and
it is,
listen
you
and
just
I
touch
explain
buildings.
my
Okay.
story.
I'm sorry. Go ahead.
Oh my God, you just ruined the moment. No. Okay, so it's like I would be surprised if you didn't even pick a game from the very beginning. But I picked the game because I feel like it was the first experience. It's like my first hands-on experience of what a video game was. And yeah, I probably played Mario.
For what console?
For Nintendo, Nintendo. But
Okay.
Nintendo
NES,
back
the
when
first one.
Nintendo,
Okay.
Mario, Duck Hunt, that era. And I obviously played Mario first, and that was a very influential game for me as a gamer and what it made me like. But Rampage was just it captured me. It was so immersive, and it was the one game that I felt a first sense of accomplishment when I was a kid. Like I must have been. It came out in '86. I probably played it, maybe a couple years after that. So I was probably like 5, 6, something like that. And like I just remember just being super competitive with myself and this system on this tube TV in front of me. This TV was probably like a 12-inch, right? I mean, it was freaking small, I would imagine, back then. And just trying to do the conquest across the whole entire United States and highlighting each state as I went, demolishing each city and climbing these buildings with these beasts that are just like completely pixelized and eating humans out of windows, crashing helicopters down to the ground, demolishing the buildings. And through it all, as far as you try to get, one of the things that kind of is like an outside contributor was my sister would occasionally come in and be like, dinner's ready, and turn the system off, right? And I'm just like, no, like I can't remember a saving system in Rampage. It was like you played all the way through. Like I don't remember you having the progress points that you can come back to and start from. So that game was like, it just meant so much to me as a kid because it was just so entertaining, and it was just, I mean, it was phenomenal. It was like it was like the first experience of video games for me, and probably really what rocketed me into, just wanting to play games continuously after that. It was just so fun and competitive.
Wow. I never would have guessed that you would have picked Rampage.
Yeah, dude, it's such an amazing game.
Years.
The concept was so fun. I mean, you're just like this beast. You're either a lizard or like King Kong, or I think there's a third one. I have a beast inside me. But beast man, mode. it was just so much fun, dude. It was such a fun game.
Wow.
And it's so simplistic, but when you think about it, like, yeah, it was amazing.
Wow. Okay. Interesting. So my number 5, it actually goes back to the same system, and it started for me back when. So full disclosure, my family and I immigrated here from the USSR, right, the Soviet Union, way back in the day. Back there, we didn't have video games. We had a TV, and we had our cable, like our cable TV was these physical cables that ran from other people's apartments into this one guy's apartment. The one guy who had a VCR in the entire apartment block. And he would charge a certain amount of money, and he'd stream, like he'd put in a VCR tape, a VHS tape, into the tape player and play these old cartoons.
What?
That's how bad the technology was back where I came from. So just to put things into perspective. So then we came to America, and we were at like one of our relatives' house, and I remember as the parents were around the dinner table talking or wherever. The kids went into the living room and they turned the TV on and they started watching some cartoon. And I'm kind of watching them, and I remember noticing that they're controlling the cartoon. And my mind was blown. I was like, how are these kids doing this? Later I found out this was Super Mario Brothers. And that's obvious that that's my fifth most influential game because it introduced me to gaming as a whole, right? I didn't know gaming even existed before this game came out, because at that time I thought it was them playing a cartoon that they could somehow manipulate, and I was instantly hooked.
The original Mario for Nintendo.
The original Mario for Nintendo, and then just a little bit after that, maybe like a year or so after that, I remember there was two girls that came to my grandma's house, and these two girls brought with them an NES boxed brand new. And I think there was part of some like outreach program for disadvantaged families or whatever. They brought it to my grandma's house, and they let us play it. And I thought they were gonna take it away from us after they left, but they left it there. And so the kids all got together, because there's like 3 families there, right? 3 families full of kids. They all got together, and each kid, like, they want to take it home with them after they're gonna leave the grandma's house. Well, it just worked out so perfectly where the 2 other families, their parents wouldn't let them have video games at home. But my parents did. So we ended up with a brand new Nintendo system in my house.
God, what?
How amazing was that?
Damn, dude, you lucked out. And look, had you never received that Nintendo system, you probably wouldn't have played games early enough in life to have appreciated it and be a gamer.
Exactly. You're probably right. And Mario is what started it all for me. I was just
See,
that game.
How could you even be surprised I picked Rampage when you have basically the same experience?
At Mario. Dude, Mario! Come on.
Yeah, but it's the same time. It's the same system, same era. It's literally the same. They're like holding hands down there.
Number 4. What do you got?
Number 4. Okay, number 4 would have to be Star Fox, the original Star Fox, 1993 release.
Super Nintendo?
For the Super Nintendo. When I played this game,
that was a good game.
I mean, if you think about it, it was basically nothing but triangles, polygons, just flat polygons, made in such a way that it made the form of what you can argue is a ship or a flying jet line or whatever. Yeah. But it was so fun because one, it was like flying. You're like a flying simulator in a sense, almost. Right? It's futuristic. You're in space. You play as a fox, Star Fox, the best fucking video game character of all time, arguably. And
I would argue against that.
And the finale of the ending, that like the boss fight at the very end, was so challenging and so demanding.
A giant pig?
No, it was if I remember, it's like a giant, like almost like a face that you kind of went inside. You went inside and then you had to avoid obstacles and blow it up. I mean, it was just so captivating. Like I just loved the whole character. I mean, everything about it. The characters, the way it just pulled you in. I think in one of the characters even died, like crashed and died, like through the story of the gameplay, and it was just so heartbreaking. Like I think it was it was either the frog or the rabbit. I can't remember, but and just like when you're flying, you're avoiding all these obstacles, like these rings, and flying through circles and avoiding bullets in this 3-dimensional world. I mean, it was just like one of the best games of its time, and that one just made me fall in love with games even more. I mean, each game obviously just keeps grabbing you, and that was just one of those games that was the best.
That was definitely a classic.
I think it was ported to the Wii U eventually, but I don't know if there was any graphical update or anything like that.
I can't comment on that because like everybody else in the world, I never played the Wii U.
Yeah. What's that? What's the Wii U? The Wii Me?
Oh man. Okay, so my number 4 is a racing game.
Oh my god.
And it's not what you're thinking. It's not Forza. It's actually Gran Turismo 2.
What?
And so to back up a little bit, before these, like there was really the racing world looked like this. It looked like, Mario Kart, right? It looked like Road Rash. It looked like Need for Speed, right? But all these games they actually had a lot more in common than they had apart, right? Where they were like these arcade games where you kind of play through and it wasn't really, it didn't feel like you were really driving a car. And then I missed Gran Turismo 1. But I did get Gran Turismo 2, and I remember playing that, and I was from the very beginning where it had you choose a car and you had to buy a used car because you're going to buy a real, like a new car in the game. Mm-hmm. Like that instant drew me in. And one memory really stands out for me in this game was that, like, as far as realism going and how involved this game was as far as your skills. It was the game had endurance races, and for anybody that doesn't know what endurance races are, they're basically races that range from like an hour to 2 hours to even 24 hours straight. Damn. 24 hours straight of racing. It was crazy, and this is before they had like Forza now has rewinds, right? Where if you make a mistake, you could rewind and keep going and make the turn perfectly right without sliding off the track or whatever. So this is back before any of this. And I remember I was playing one of these endurance races, and I think it was a 2 hour long race. It was like 100 laps. It's about 2 hours. And I was maybe like on lap 80 something, like high 80s. And I was in second place. And I remember chasing down this guy, kind of going through the corners. And what I would do is, I don't know, Victor, are you familiar with the concept of drafting?
Drifting, you mean?
Drafting.
Oh, drafting. Oh, behind the car.
Exactly.
Yeah.
I think it really kind of took off in NASCAR, right? They use it a lot in NASCAR, but
ever since Tom Cruise explained it in that one movie, the NASCAR movie, I was
Days of Thunder.
Something like that, probably.
I don't remember that part, but I do remember that racing movie. But anyway, so drafting is where you get behind the car and then you use because it breaks the air for you, right? You have less friction, and you could use that to kind of slingshot yourself around the car in front of you. And so I remember I would draft behind this guy. I would have my car catch up and get enough power, but then right as I was about to overtake him, a turn would come up, and I couldn't quite take him, and I kept going back and forth for several laps. I kept trying to take this one guy, and I couldn't get in front of him because you had to be cautious enough to where you wouldn't enter a turn too quickly, otherwise you'd spin out of control and lose the race. Mm-hmm. And so you had to. It was like this balancing act, and this balancing act really drew me in, where you had to be just right, and for 2 hours straight, you had to be totally focused on every turn, on every time you have to brake, every time you accelerate, every time you turn the joystick just enough to make the turn without oversteering or understeering or whatever, right? And I remember after several laps of this, it was like lap 90 something probably, like right after like maybe an hour and like say 40 minutes of driving on this one level. There's a clear, and I think the level was called Laguna Seca, is a real racetrack, I believe in California, by Mazda, and there's a straightaway before the last turn, and I'm drafting behind this guy, and I get just enough power to overtake him. I start overtaking him, and then as I'm going full force, I'm right next to him, and I edge just in front. I see the turn come up, and I'm like, shit, I realized that moment I might be going too fast. I smashed the brakes. And as I hit the brakes, not only am I going too fast, I realized that I'm on the outside of the turn. So I can't even use him as a barrier. I slide out of control, Victor, into the grass or into the sand, and I watch car after car pass by me as I try to return my car around. I lost the race, but the game was so addicting that the very next day I went back in and retried it again. And that's how much this game got me. It was realistic driving simulator. There was like nothing else before it.
Damn. I think when I first saw Gran Turismo 2, I was very mesmerized. Like I was like, holy shit, is this real life? Like back then the graphics looked obviously horrible if you compare them to now, right? I mean it looks, I mean, you could tell, but when you first saw it, you're like, holy crap, that looks so cool. Yeah. And I just remember the realism that it tried to capture. And I remember specifically, my friend was playing it, and I feel like he was driving alongside the not necessarily the cliff, but on the edge of a mountain. And as he's turning, he enters this tunnel that's carved out of it.
Oh, yep, I know exactly what that was.
And that part, that scenery that you see, and then you just zoom into this carved out tunnel of the side of a mountain. I was like, wow, that looks amazing. And then I attempted to try racing, and then I realized I suck at realistic racing games, and then I never played it again. Oh man.
Okay, so what's your number 3?
Okay, so my number 3 is the first game that I think I really stopped to realize that games can be considered art to me. And
Wait, let me guess. Can I guess?
sure.
I think it's that desert game where you walk around as a little guy dressed in a bathrobe.
No.
Oh, damn.
That was recently, dude. Come on, man. This is the vision I've had for a long.
Oh.
But it's Ico for
I remember that.
PlayStation 2 on 2001 it was released.
Yeah, I remember
And
that.
it was so beautiful. It's such a beautiful game, and the story is beautiful, and it's a story of bonding between this stranger that you barely know and that you're trying to keep out of harm's way. But there's very little to it, and you're essentially playing this young boy who comes across this, like, maybe this princess or this angel-like figure that's being hunted by these demons that come out of the ground like these black shadows, kind of like in the movie Ghost, with Patrick Swayze and Demi Moore.
Never seen it.
Well, like the evil demons would come out from the shadows, like the shadows would form into these demons that would come out from the ground. Same way, they'd come out from from the ground, and when you were far enough separated from her, they would try to capture her and then take her away, and it was your responsibility to rush to her, fight them off with what seems like a wooden sword essentially, and then you basically fight off the shadows, and then they disappear, and then you and the girl use each other to go through this environment that's like in puzzle form. So like you would need to climb a rock before you can help her up, or you would need to push this for her to access that. So you're puzzling your way through this environment, trying to fight off these evil shadow demons, while helping her you don't even know what you're helping her for. You're just trying to help her escape. And it's just a beautiful game that I was like, it made me really think of how a game is created from the very first concept, and these hand-drawn works that are done by these artists, and then it goes into 3D work, and then music's added, and then atmosphere. And it's the first game that I think I can remember if I really look back, it's probably the first game where I can say that is the point where I realized that video games really in the essence are a form of art. Others might argue otherwise, but I think they are.
Do you think you notice these things, like you're talking about, like how games were created? You start thinking about that. Do you think it's because of this game as an art style, or do you think because you've matured as a gamer over time? Because this came out in PS2, right? So you weren't like a child by then. Mm-hmm. That and because this game's an art style. So not only is it because just this game is so special to you, but because you yourself have grown as a gamer.
Well, I absolutely think it's because, one, I've grown as a gamer. Two, because I kind of understand the process behind creating a game. And a lot of it is art. I mean, you're sketching, you're drawing, you're painting, you're doing 3D work. All that is art. If you were to use any of those mediums in any other platform, like a painter is actually painting on a canvas, or a sketch artist is actually drawing a sketch of a still life model or something like that, you would consider that art. But because somebody does it for a video game, somebody's like, oh, that's not art. It absolutely is art, I think. And of course I didn't realize that maybe at the time when I played Ico, or even before, but when I look back, I think in a way I knew it was art, because just how mesmerized I was, how I appreciate it. It was the first environment that I really would explore, because it was just so captivating and it was so beautiful, and it made you want to kind of wander around, rather than any other games before that, like Star Fox or Rampage. You're just playing to get to the end. You're playing to accomplish something. In Ico, it was completely different. I was playing because I loved being in that world. I wanted to be a part of this adventure. I didn't want it to end, and when it did, I did have a sense of accomplishment. But it's like that bittersweet thing. Like, have you ever had a game that you just love so much that you're not ready to end, but it does, and you wish it's absolutely rare. But this game, it's one of the few games that I just wish I could play just a little bit more of, because it was just so good.
Jeez, man, you just gave me shivers.
and it had a lot of artistic influence. Like, one of the original concept cover arts was strongly, and I wish I remembered the name, but it was strongly reference to a previous artist who did a very previous art style, like paint on canvas, like oil on canvas. And I'll look it up and maybe I'll mention it on the next podcast. But it was very heavily referenced to actual art that had been done in the past.
Jeez, wow. I did play that game a little bit too. I think I rented it only though, so I didn't get too far into it.
I
Yeah,
rented it too, but I loved it so much that I played through it. Luckily.
You could build a village in that game, right? Wasn't there like a building mechanic?
No, there's no built-in mechanic.
I thought there was like you could build something. Maybe I'm thinking a different game.
Yeah,
Okay.
I think you're probably.
Anyway, my number 3 is a game that I know both you and I hold very dear to our hearts. Battlefield 2.
Oh, that's a good one.
That's a good one,
That's
and
a
here's
good one.
why.
We never played Battlefield 2 together, though.
We never have. No, we started with Battlefield 3.
I love
but
Battlefield 2, man.
Yeah.
That's like probably one of the best Battlefields ever.
Yeah, and here's why it was amazing to me is because it wasn't the first online shooter I ever played, right? I played Call of Duty before that, and I played, I don't know, Quake or whatever, right? Like other multiplayer games. I know I've played a bunch of other games, but Battlefield 2 was the first game where I don't know how else to put this. I felt comfortable playing online by myself without any friends. Mm-hmm. And it's because the teams were so big and so diverse, and there were so many different things to do and so many ways you could contribute, to where I didn't feel like I could really let the team down in any way. And so some things I remember doing was that there was some, like I'm not the best online player, right? Like I don't dedicate enough time to really be super good at any one game. But what made Battlefield 2 so special for me was the options that you could do, right? The ways you could play the game. And so one way that I would often play is I'd be like the sneaky guy that would sneak in behind enemy lines, behind everybody, and I would play as the engineer class, I think it was called, where you had C4, and I'd sneak in behind enemy lines and I would put C4 on their special equipment, to where like their radio stations, right, where it would make their commander blind for a certain amount of time when you blow it up, and he couldn't tell him where any of the bad guys are. And it would give our team the edge for maybe like a minute or so.
You did the suicide missions.
Exactly. So I would sneak in, I would put the stuff in, I would blow it up, and then I would run away somewhere else. So while everybody, like not everybody, but a bunch of people on their team would run in to try to repair it, I'd be capturing one of their flag points.
Yeah.
It was so cool because all of a sudden, like, you don't have to be like super good at shooting. You could play it in different, like a way you wanted to play it.
Yeah.
Right, and you could contribute to other ways, and you could get a vehicle, and you could start shooting stuff down with a vehicle, like a tank or whatever. Like it was cool because it didn't funnel you down this certain area to mass suicide, right, with everybody else. Like you could choose to be a smart player and play it in different ways.
Yeah, that's how I played, because I had never had anybody to play with on that game, Battlefield 2, so I played it by myself. But it was amazing how, even if you played by yourself, you still felt like you were a major contributor to that game. If you played well, obviously, but you could still achieve a lot by yourself, and that's what I liked about that game. I put in countless hours, and there was like 2 maps that I just loved on it. And
what were they?
Well, I don't remember the name. One of them was like this desert map with like the center was like the rubbles of like an old village. Most of it was stone, I think.
Did it have a fountain in their game map somewhere?
Kind of in the center where one of the flags was.
Okay, I think that's one of my favorite maps too.
Yeah, that one, and then another one. It was kind of like this this base or something, I think, with like these smaller little hangars with a bridge that kind of went through the center of it.
Did it have 2 big nuclear pillars?
I think so.
That's my other favorite one.
Yeah, like those 2 maps were so good, dude. Like that whole game was amazing.
Yeah.
I mean, it was amazing. Anyway, so my number two. Okay, now my number 2 would have to be Metal Gear Solid 2. 2001 release.
Really?
PlayStation
Not
2. No. Well, Metal Gear Solid 1 I never even played until it was redone and brought back on the GameCube.
Okay. Gotcha.
So my first experience was Metal Gear Solid 2. And I remember specifically walking into my friend's apartment. Like I was like 16, 17, and we knew that me and my friend Michael knew these older guys. They were probably like 19, 20, and they had like
cool guys.
They were the cool guys, right? They had their own apartment. They were like, but and they would invite us to smoke pot or whatever. And one of them actually was really cool because he was the one that worked at the arcade that we went to all the time at the mall. So he would hook us up with free games at the arcade. We'd play Tekken a lot, which was popular. So I remember walking into this apartment, and I look over, and they're playing video games, and I see what they're playing, and it's Metal Gear Solid 2. And immediately I was like, "Holy crap! What the heck is this?" Because it was this top-down view, and it was a part when they were at the oil tankers things where it's in the water.
Yeah.
So
Okay,
I was like,
when he
"Holy!"
plays Raiden.
Yeah. So I was like, "Oh man, this looks really cool." And I looked at the case and it said "Tactical Espionage." I remember that because that's the only game, even to this day, that really says that tactical espionage. And I was like, holy crap, this sounds freaking awesome. You know, you're hiding behind these walls, you're crawling around, tactical espionage. I was like, I gotta play this game. So I bought the game, played it, fell in love. It took me a while to take to the cinematics, but in the end I appreciated what they were trying to do with them. I just thought, it's Metal Gear Solid cinematics. They are what they are. And that game just It just took it to a whole new level of what a video game can do, and the top-down scenario was very intriguing. The stealth aspect of it was like I've never seen before, and I don't think any other game has really come close to that, except for maybe Splinter Cell. But that it has an entirely different stealth mechanic, I think, and I just love the whole story. And when I first played it, it actually didn't start out in the oil tankers. It started out on that ship, that freighter, right? So when that part started, I was like, "Holy crap! This looks even better." Like, I loved the freighter scene more than I do the rest of the game. The freighter scene.
I would agree with that. I think most people did, actually.
Yeah, like when you play as actual Solid Snake, in the freighter scene, like I thought that game was just so. I was disappointed when it ended, in a sense, but I still love the rest of the game. I don't want to lessen it anymore, but that game was just so cinematic to me, and that's what drew me in, because I'm heavily attracted to story-driven games. Like, I just hope for a good story, and that game to me at the time had a good story. It still does, but it kind of got played out with following games of Metal Gear Solid.
It's a crazy story,
yeah,
dude.
But and I think that's what kind of intrigued me. It was the plots and the twists, and like just this audacity of a story that, like, how the hell is that possible, right? So but I think that was a very heavily influential game for me, and what it brought, and just how much I still adore that franchise.
Dude, so I actually played, my Metal Gear time started with the original on the NES.
Oh, and then when they remade it actually. Sorry to cut you off. When they remade Metal Gear Solid 2, and they remade it Metal Gear Solid 2 Subsistence, and that's what actually made me buy an Xbox 360, believe it or not. I love that game so much because they redid the camera system where they made it third person. And I was like, holy smokes, I got to play. So I went out, bought a 360 for that one reason, was because Metal Gear Solid 2 Subsistence came out. So Metal Gear Solid, just take note, if you want to attract a gamer to buy your system, steal a PlayStation game and then bring it over to your side and redo it better. But that's a little backstory to that.
Yeah, I remember playing I remember playing a little bit of the first Metal Gear. Like, I remember very little of it. I remember it was really hard, and I didn't get very far. And I remember beating the first one on the PlayStation, the original PlayStation. That was amazing. I was totally drawn in. But my number 2 actually comes from the same year that Metal Gear Solid, the original Metal Gear Solid on the PlayStation 1 was released. And I remember this. I remember it was a highly contested year for Game of the Year because it was Metal Gear Solid and it was this game pit against each other.
Oh, wait, Metal Gear Solid 1?
Yeah, the original Metal Gear Solid on the PlayStation 1. What game do you think do you know what game it was? Do you know what game it was pit against?
Perfect Dark.
The game that came out. Nope.
What?
Zelda Ocarina of Time.
Oh, really?
Yep.
Oh, man.
And of course Zelda won over because, one, it had the name recognition, right?
Yeah.
Beyond anything else. And 2, it was the first 3D Zelda, and it was arguably the best Zelda that's ever come out.
Yeah. I would have to agree that it should have won. Metal Gear Solid 1 was great, but
it was super good.
But Zelda like burns every game at that time.
Yeah, like I remember first, like, I didn't recognize it this time, right? At the time.
So your number 2 game is Zelda Ocarina of Time.
Zelda Ocarina of Time, yeah.
Okay.
And I remember I didn't recognize it at the time where now I kind of appreciate like, the hero's journey, right? That Link took, right, where he was taken from the world he knew, like the village of his little elf people or whatever the hell they're called, and taken into this whole new world where he had to save the universe. But as a kid, I remember being able to totally relate to this character. This kid that doesn't know any better is just given a sword and a shield, and he has to like little by little evolve himself to become a hero. And I was like, this is amazing. And I felt as a person, like as a kid, evolving alongside him. Like I was that hero, and I was saving that princess. And this is the first time I ever played a Zelda game, and so I didn't really know the storyline in every Zelda game is the same. Like for me, this was unique. I was saving a princess as this little elf boy, and like I had to fight some asshole named I had to fight some asshole named Ganon who wanted to rule the world for whatever reason. And I was like, hell no, you don't. And so,
oh no, you didn't.
Yeah, and like I remember like everything about that game it was the setting that drew me in, right? It was the ability to roam around on your horse. It was the fact that you could explore these dungeons. It was the fact that you could talk to these villagers and do like little like kind of like relax quests for them, like find chickens or whatever. Yeah. And it was being like engulfed in this overall story that you could either pay attention to or you could do different things if you wanted to.
Yeah, it was. And it was
so great. Yeah, it was so great. I remember that was when you mentioned it a little bit ago about how there were games that you didn't want to end. That was the first game that I remember playing where I did not want it to end.
And that was a pretty long game already to begin with.
Yeah.
And I remember one time.
The fishing. Dude, you remember the fishing?
The fishing was super fun.
It was so good.
It was super fun. The fishing was super fun. The temples were just so well done. What I thought was funny was like if you attack the chickens, then they'll come and attack you in hordes. I thought that was fucking hilarious. I thought that was like one of the best comical reliefs in that game. I like the part when you're going through the garden in the palace, and it's like they add the stealth mechanic, and you have to avoid the guards.
Yes.
Like
oh
that.
My God,
like
yes.
Every little thing about that game, like they added just so little things across your journey that just struck you, and they were so individual. It's like they almost created a separate game mechanic for that one little experience. Like when you get the horse for the very first time, or what's the other thing when you're like going through. You're like going into this rock. The cliffside, but it's like split in half, and you're going between it. Like it just the whole experience was amazing in Zelda: Ocarina of Time. I thought it was great. When you're going through the woods, the trees, like you're just going in these tunnels, and you kind of get lost. You're like, which one do I go through?
Oh yeah.
I mean, it was so good.
That was cool. It was a little puzzle. Yeah, man, everything about that game was just phenomenal. Yeah. Absolutely phenomenal.
Yeah. I don't. Who knows if Zelda will ever be topped, but. Breath of the Wild, I think, may have come close, but I still don't think so.
Ocarina of Time is number one, for sure, as far as Zelda's go.
Yeah.
So number one for you. Number
my God.
Most influential game of all time for Victor.
Number one game all
what
time for me, SOCOM U.S. Navy SEALs, the very
first
one.
No way, really?
The very
That's
first
mine,
one.
Too.
What?
Just kidding.
Oh, I'm going to say what? Released in 2002, played it on the PlayStation 2, and this game shaped probably the rest of my gaming experience from that point forward, because it was from that point forward where I was probably just as much, if not more, of an online gamer as I was a single player gamer, campaign gamer. That's when like I went from just single player campaign gaming to breaching my doors open to online play. And that game, I probably played thousands, and everybody has that one game that they just obsessed over. This is probably that game. Metal Gear Solid came close, I would say, but the only reason it didn't is because it didn't have an online mode. SOCOM U.S. Navy SEALs took over my life because it had the online mode. But that's not to discredit the single player mode. Like I actually played SOCOM U.S. Navy SEALs probably for about a year single player before I ever played the online, because I never had internet. So I only experienced the single player campaign. But what drew me in about that was you had this headset on, the very first game to ever come with a headset, I think.
Oh, I remember that. Yeah, I think so.
And you can actually speak commands into your headset, and control the 3 other characters that were with you, the squadron of U.S. Navy SEALs, the most elite of the elite. If you weren't going to pass the physical to get into buds, hey, the next best thing, play this game. So I mean, this game is so fun, very challenging because it's very tactical, and it's meant to be played in a stealth way. At least the first 3 or 4 were. I think 4 got a little bit more not so stealthy, but and just the idea of verbally calling commands to your team, them complying with very good accuracy. I mean, every game has bugs when there's voice commands involved, or when there's any kind of commands of control and companion AI. But this game was so well done, and the way that you had to incorporate them in your gameplay, like they forced you, but it wasn't uncomfortable. And then once I got on the online, I mean, that was like my first. I mean, my cherry got popped at that point, right? So I was like bleeding everywhere because I'm getting killed because I've never played online before. But once I got good, yeah. But once I got good, it was just so much fun. Like I've never experienced. It's like a different kind of fun. Like you can have so much fun playing single player campaign, and that could be the ultimate high. But there's a different kind of high when you're playing online gaming, and that when I experienced that, I mean, I would stay up till like 3, 4 o'clock in the morning just playing online.
Jeez.
And I was actually in a squad that made this fun. Like there was 16 of us, or I forget how. I think it started out with 8 at first or something like that. I would meet up with them almost every night online. We would join together and we would have actual tournament battles with other teams, like best out of 3, best out of however many. And dude, that is I wish I had that now. Like I knew a squad of friends besides just me and you. I wish we had like a group, 4 or 5, maybe even 10 players where we can get on a game and just dominate, because that's the only game that I've ever experienced a kind of a tight-knit online community like that with gaming. And I probably will never experience it again because I don't have that many friends. Luckily, I picked you out of the hat and it fit, whatever. But
the glove fits.
Yeah, I mean, SOCOM U.S. Navy SEALs, that's one of the franchises that I wish that they would bring back with full force, but who knows?
Yeah, I hope so. That was a really good game.
Yeah. It was amazing.
I wonder what, man. Okay.
So what's your numero uno?
So my number 1 is actually very opposite of yours. It is not a multiplayer game, and it is not really a shooter, though it has shooting elements. But it is like if you were to look up no, not even close. If you were to look up a list of best games ever, I bet you there's not a list you could find that doesn't have this game somewhere on it, or at least mentioned as an honorable nominee. Mm-hmm. And that game is the original Deus Ex on PC that came out back in 2000.
Really?
Dude, it is so good. Okay, to put it in perspective,
I don't want to know.
IGN gave it a 9.4.
Oh, that's not bad.
That's pretty freaking good. And so what makes this game so special for me is before this, all the games I played were platformers, they were RPGs, they were shooters, they were racing games. But they were games that it felt like games. Like it didn't really feel like you knew you were playing a game. I don't know how else to describe it. Mm-hmm. Deus Ex took it one step further, where their emphasis wasn't really shooting, although shooting was fine. It wasn't really stealth, although stealth worked great. And it wasn't really story, although the story was really involved. It wasn't any one aspect. It was the world building that happened in that game that draws you in like nothing else. And what makes that world building so masterful is that it let players decide what they want to do and how they want to do it. And I know a lot of games have choice nowadays where you choose A or B, or you choose like how to proceed from this point on, or how the story should continue, or how to interact with the character. But no game has ever done a choice in gameplay as well as Deus Ex has. And like
at that point, or are you talking about to this point now?
Today, up to today.
Really? Wow.
No game has done it as well as Deus Ex. And like
not even like The Witcher or.
Well, The Witcher did a really good job with story choice, but not with gameplay choice. So here's something. Like at one point in this game, And I hope it's not too much of a spoiler because this game did come out 18 years ago. So I'm hoping anybody who's wanted to play has played it by now. But if not, cover your ears. Oh, I'll try not to spoil it too much. But basically, here's one level. At some point in the game, you're captured by the enemies. And you're put in a prison cell. You escape from the prison cell. And from that point on, you have a choice of how to proceed. And really, your choices are like you could take on the shooting approach, right? The first-person shooter, where you shoot your way through the prison, right? And to do that, you'd have to kill the first guard, get into his locker, take his guns, and use those guns to get better guns and better guns and better guns until you shoot your way out. Mm-hmm. And it's pretty standard. The next option was the all stealth approach. And to do that, what you would do was you'd sneak around people, you'd you'd search their desks, search their lockers, get information about data codes, about passcodes, use those passcodes to access different parts of the lab, to shut down cameras, to deactivate security systems, and you'd let yourself out over time. And the third option, the option I remember taking the first time, was kind of like a mix of stealth and hacking. And one thing that really stood out was I remember as I was exploring this base, and this base was massive, they were doing some biological experiments in animals where they'd merge different animal DNAs and make these crazy killer animals. And I remember getting into one area where they were studying these huge, like imagine like these scaled covered dogs that were the size of like a rhino. And they had these in this big like glass structure where they were studying these, right? And there's like 6 guards around them. I cloaked in and I snuck in kind of close to the guards and I hacked the security system. I then chose to open the gate for where the dogs, these crazy hybrid dogs, were stored. The dogs got out. All the security people, the 6 security guys, ran towards this gate trying to resecure it and trying to kill these dogs. And this whole fight ensued. At the end of the fight, only one security guard was barely alive, who I easily overpowered, took his things, took his data pad, and got access to an armory full of weapons. I got all these weapons, and then I was able to use those weapons to get out past the final checkpoint, past all these bad guys, and using their weapons against them. And another part, like you could hack enemy turrets and turn the enemy turrets against the masters to shoot the bad guys down for you.
Yeah, that's what I would have done.
Dude, it's crazy. Like, and this is not like an isolated incident. Every portion of every level is designed this way to give you so much choice. If you just happen to like look around for a second, you could find different ways to do everything. And like, but the part that really stood out for me more than anything else in this game was, in this game you have a brother named Paul, and it turns out, like, you start off both of you guys working for the government. It turns out that he is secretly a double agent, and he works for like this terrorist group. Mm-hmm. And you confront him at one point, and he kind of convinces you, kind of not. You don't really know if you want to take his side yet. But at one point, the government is onto him, and you're in his apartment after he's been hurt by something. Like you guys escaped some kind of tragedy, right? And he's really hurt, so he can't quite make it out himself. And you hear a bunch of bad guys, like these really tough agents, outside his apartment lining up to take down the door. And in the game, he tells you to leave now with the information you have so you can get it back to the bad guys. And that's the only direction you have. But secretly, without the game even telling you, you have a undefined option to stay with and fight. And if you leave him in the apartment, he's dead the rest of the game. If you stay and fight with him, he's alive the entire game after that.
Oh, wow.
How crazy is that? Like, no other game I've seen does that before.
That's crazy that they would invest that much in a character and you have the option to either terminate him from the beginning or not.
Yeah, and you don't even know that you have the option. Like, it's an invisible option that he just tells you to go. And if you disobey him and fight alongside him, you can make it out alive with him.
Damn.
And he helps you out through the rest of the game.
That's pretty cool.
It's crazy. Yeah, it just totally like destroyed my perception of what games can be.
Yeah. Nice.
Jeez, dude, we're over an hour.
Yeah, so much for this episode being 30 minutes, huh?
Well, guys, enjoy. You got a little extra content. Damn. We just can't shut up.
Yeah. Mainly you. No, it's like
damn, dude. Okay, anyway, guys, Thank you so much for joining us. As always,
Yep,
follow
thank
us
you.
on Twitter,
Twitter,
Instagram, email us.
email.
Do whatever you want.
Do whatever.
Find us on anywhere you want, right? We're everywhere. So subscribe. Let us know what you like. Let us know what you don't. Give us some examples of what you want us to talk about. We'll be happy to discuss it. And if you want to be interviewed, if you're in the game industry, let us know. We're happy to bring you on board. By the way, Victor, I have been talking to a couple of people that we may have some more interviews lined up soon.
Nice. And anybody who's trying to get in the gaming industry, you can also check out our previous episodes, PAXP Voice with Anton Borkel and Alexei Ryan, the voice actor. Both very cool guys. I mean, the episodes were super entertaining, and they offer a lot of good information and really a lot of good insight on motivation and what they did personally to really get noticed in the industry and get a foot in there. So if you're looking for some pointers or some tips, listen to those episodes because they're really fun, they're really entertaining, they give you a lot of information, and they both personally talk about their personal experience with games and in their career in games too. So that's always fun to always listen to.